Jesus has overcome, and the grave is overwhelmed. Victory is won. He is risen from the dead, and I will rise when He calls my name. No more sorrow, no more pain. I will rise on eagle's wings before my God, fall on my knees and rise. I will rise.
George Truett was at one time the pastor of the First Baptist Church of Dallas, Texas. George Truett would stand on Sunday night and he would preach over what was then called a clear channel 1,000,000-watt radio station. And all over the United States and as far as into Canada and Central America, people would listen to George Truett. He would literally preach to millions and millions and millions. He was invited to go out and spend the afternoon one time with a man who was a member of his church. He was an oil millionaire. And after they had eaten lunch, the man took George Truett out and he told Truett, he said, look to the east. And he said, as far as you can see, I own that. Then he turned and he said, look to the north. And he said, as far as you can see, I own that. He said, look to the west, look to the south. He said the same thing. And he waited for Truett to say something to congratulate him. And then George Truett looked at him and he said, sir, what do you own in that direction? That's what it means to leave all of this. What will you have? What would it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? That's a good question. One day, if there's still, when you die, preachers that will do funerals, what will be said at your funeral? Where will they say that you are? Is anybody going to be able to say, I was there when they asked Jesus into their hearts? I was there when I heard their lips say that they knew Jesus Christ. Open your hearts right now. Invite Him to come in and speak to your heart. Like a machine gun, the Apostle John has seen the judgment of God come upon planet Earth. And it's coming. It's coming not only upon planet Earth, but it's coming on the United States of America. It's not only coming on the United States of America, it's coming on Charlotte, North Carolina. You can bet the judgment of God is coming. Just as I hear the thunder telling me that the rain's coming, I hear the thunder of God saying, judgment is coming. It's not over. God says, though, the best is yet to come, John. You've lost all your friends. All the apostles are dead but you. Jesus is ascended into heaven and you're still here. You've lost your wife. You've lost all your children. You are alone. Your churches, many of your churches have turned and followed a false Christ, opening their doors and saying that they are a Christian church, but you know they are. And see, so he said, I want to show you something, John. And he opened the doors of eternity. And that's what I want God to do for you today. And he saw the beautiful city of God, place that we call heaven. I know we don't talk much about that very much anymore, but we should, because if you're a believer, you're going to spend more time there than you are here. That's where you're going, aren't you? By the way, if you decided that Friday night about 6:30 that you wanted to go out and eat at one of the finer restaurants in Charlotte, would you even show up without a reservation? Not if you want to get in, you wouldn't. You need a reservation. If you went down to the Panthers game next say September, October, and you walked up to the gate and they said, show me your ticket, would you expect to get in without a ticket? Have you made your reservation? Do you have a ticket to heaven? First thing I want you to see about heaven tonight is it's a sure place. This is not a figment of my imagination. It's a sure place. Look at Revelation chapter 21, verse 1. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth. For the first heaven and the first earth passed away. There's no longer any sea. That means for the Hebrew people, the sea was chaos, and it was always rolling, and it was unsure, and they couldn't figure it out. So he says, there's no longer any chaos. There's no longer any uncertainty. Heaven is a sure place. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride adored for her husband. Recently, I had to take a trip overseas, and I knew that I was going to a particular city that I'd never been to before. And so the first thing I did, I got up on the internet and I looked up that city. I looked up the temperature. I looked up the longitude and the latitude. I looked up the language. I looked up everything I could. I wanted to know everything that I could about that place so I would be able to kind of navigate myself around. We're going to heaven. And we want to know something about it. What does John say in this vision of heaven? He says all this is passed away. It's gone. It's fled from its presence. It's no longer around. It's destroyed. And everything in it, the wealth, is gone. Wall Street is gone. Washington is gone. The homes are gone. The autos are gone. Detroit is gone. The jobs are gone. The dreams are gone. The aspirations are gone. Nothing is left except what's in heaven. I heard a little girl say one time, she said, I'm here sick, but I'm not homesick. Some of you are sick and you don't even know it. You're looking for something sure and certain. Some of you are sick and you enjoy it. Some of you are sick and you won't admit it. I reminded going to see a lady one time in ICU in the hospital. And I went in, and as was my custom, and still I do it today, I wanted to have a word of prayer with her. And I started praying that God would heal her, and she said, stop. And I listened very closely. She said, don't pray for that. Don't pray for that. I have more over there than I do over here. Let me go home. John 14:1, Jesus said, don't let your hearts be troubled. Trust in God. Trust also in me. In my Father's house are many rooms. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'm going there to prepare a place for you. If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. John remembered Jesus saying that. And John had somebody in heaven. Who was it? Jesus. Like a bride. Spare no expense. Make everything ready. Prepare it. God is preparing you for a place. And the older you get, the more you'll want to see heaven. And the more precious it will become to you. Because the people you love will be there. Heaven is a sure place. Secondly, heaven is a satisfying place. Heaven is a satisfying place. Have you ever gone to church and found somebody say, oh, I just don't like it here. It's just boring. Okay, you're not going to be happy in heaven. It's a satisfying place. Verse 3. I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, behold, the tabernacle of God is among men, and he will dwell among them, and they shall be his people, and God himself will be among them. And he, watch this, I love this. Verse 4. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. Have you ever cried yourself to sleep? You won't do that in heaven. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. There'll be no broken hearts in heaven. There'll be no loneliness in heaven. There might be psychiatrists in heaven, but they won't be practicing. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes. And there will no longer be any death. There are no cemeteries in heaven. There are no funeral homes in heaven. There will no longer be any mourning or crying or pain. The first things have passed away. Remember that, John. Remember that. The most satisfying time of your life is when Jesus was there. You remember that? You remember how you loved Jesus? You remember how you walked with Jesus? You remember how you talked to Jesus? It was so satisfying. Heaven's going to be satisfying like that because, John, you're going to be with Jesus. And where Jesus is, there is no pain. Where Jesus is, there is no death. Where Jesus is, there is no sadness. Where Jesus is, there is no sorrow. Jesus makes us, the things that makes us weep are gone when Jesus reigns. I remember as a young pastor hearing the story about R.G. Lee's deathbed. It wasn't a confession, but a deathbed statement. R.G. Lee was a great preacher of his time, and he was one of the most poetic pastor preachers you've ever heard. It just rolled. He was a major in Latin, so he could just take the language and it just went off his tongue. And he preached about Jesus, and he preached about heaven, and he just preached and preached and preached and preached. And it came time for him to die, and his daughter, his only child, was there, and he opened his eyes. He'd been out for quite a while, and he opened his eyes, and they looked up, and he said, "Oh, honey, I see your mama. Oh, baby, she's beautiful. Oh, I see my mama. She's so beautiful." And then he said, "Oh, I see Jesus. Oh, I never did him justice." If you ever see, nothing else will satisfy. You know, I do a lot of international travel, and I have found out something. In fact, my stress dream is this, that I'll come to the airport and I've lost my passport. You can't get in and you can't get out without a passport. You can't get in to heaven without a passport. And you won't want to get out once you get there. Jesus, his picture needs to be on your passport. Jesus. You see, heaven is available. Heaven is available to you right now. Then lastly, I want you to see, man, I tell you what, isn't it amazing when we talk about heaven, how quickly it goes? I mean, you just want to quit talking about it and get on up there. Heaven is a sanctified place. Sanctified place. Verse 6. Then he said to me, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. I will give to the one who thirsts from the springs of the water of life without cost. He who overcomes will inherit these things, and I will be his God, and he will be my son." Oh, wow. What a relationship. I will be his God, and he will be my son. Oh, no, here we go. We're not going to say much about it, but we do need to finish the scripture. Verse 8. "But the cowardly and unbelieving and abominable and murderers and immoral persons and sorcerers and idolaters and all liars, their part will be in the lake that burns with fire and brimstone, which is a second death." Then one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls full of the seven last plagues came and spoke with me, saying, "Come here, and I will show you the bride, the wife of the Lamb." I'm going to show you who's going to be in heaven, John. You see all those folks? He saw you. He saw, if you're a believer. Notice I didn't say Christian. I said believer. Is Jesus real to you? He saw you. He saw me. He saw his mother. He saw Mary. He saw all his friends. He saw Paul, James, He saw Jesus, and he saw himself. Can you see yourself in heaven? I remember when James Kennedy first came out with what was called Evangelism Explosion, and I've asked the question 1,000 times. There was a diagnostic question. You'd start off right off to see where the people, if you died right now and went to heaven, and you stood before God and he said, what right do you have to come into my heaven? What would you say? That's a pretty good question. That's a pretty good question. I'm going to give you the password. You ready? Mercy. 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 Jesus. When you stand before him and you recognize him as Jesus, all you say is mercy. Can you remember? Don't forget that word. Mercy. Have that at the deepest part of your brain. You won't get a long time to talk. Mercy. 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 There's a little girl that was blind. She had, for some reason or other, she had not been able to see from birth. And the doctors came to her mother one day and said, there's a certain kind of operation. We don't know if it'll work or if it won't, but we feel like if we try it, perhaps we can restore a lot of her vision, and she'll be able to see. And so they operated on the little girl. Of course, they put the bandages over her eyes, and came the day when the doctor came in to take the bandage off of her eyes, and he took her bandage off her eyes, and she blinked, and she looked around, and she could see light for the first time, and her eyes became clearer and clearer and clearer until finally she could see fairly well. And so there came the day when they decided to take her outside into the sunlight. They thought she could stand that. They took her outside in the sunlight, and they showed her the trees. She said, oh, it's so beautiful. They showed her birds. Oh, so they showed her the sky. Oh, and she just went on and on. And finally, that night, they could see the sun setting from the hospital room, and she saw that, and she said, oh, mother, why didn't you tell me how beautiful it was? And her mama said, I tried, but I just ran out of words. You got to see it to believe it. Now it's your turn to look, and it's your turn to see it. We're not here to judge you. We're here to tell you there's a better place called heaven. And I pray that sometime tonight that God will take the scales from your eyes and he'll pull back that curtain, and you'll just get a glimpse. And then you'll know your faith is not in vain. Thank you again for listening to a telecast of Challenge for Living. My prayer is that your faith has grown and that Jesus Christ is personal to you. One of the things we do here at Challenge for Living, in fact, the main thing we do, is we try to go throughout the entire world and tell people about Jesus Christ. And the way we do that is to go on mission trips where we go all over the world. Right now, we're building an orphanage in India, attempting to reach thousands, millions for Jesus Christ that have been abandoned by their parents and by their government and by everyone. And so if you want to be a part of this, then I ask you to send us a donation at Challenge for Living, 7427 Matthews Mint Hill Road, Post Office Box 104, Suite 105, Mint Hill, North Carolina, 28227. You see that on your screen right there? I hope that you'll pray about this and become a part of what's going on as we reach the entire world for Jesus Christ.